So what we're going to do today is just basically go through the normal stuff, see how it's doing, a couple of recaps, and then that's it. I don't have a tool this week to show, so we're just gonna. This one is gonna be a little bit shorter than normal. So let's start with the regular uh, big guys and looking at them on the month. Let's keep in mind that we only have basically 3 days of month left. So, you know, it's not really much. A lot of these things have already hit their targets for the month. So we'll keep in mind exhaustion um, going into December, but also market conditions. You know, we just came off of Black Friday, and then we had that Santa Claus rally that sometimes happens. So we'll just have to see if that happens. But the exhaustion risk will definitely let us know that we may have some pullbacks coming. As we know, we've been on a tear, but we'll go over that. So, yeah, looking at these on the month, you see that they've mostly hit their targets. On the week, I just want to kind of point out that the VIX has broken below this 200 support, but just remember the last couple of times it did that, it basically bounced. And unless it breaks below, what's this, 1957, it has made higher lows for weeks. So I'm honestly anticipating that it may even rev strat on the week and reverse, which would give us a red week on the indices and stuff. So something to keep in mind. Looking at it on the day, it has broken below the 200. So, although I am looking forward to reverse, it can also still keep going down because right now it's showing us that it is in a downtrend. So we'll keep that in mind. But see, the Russell here is at a resistance. It's at that 200 resistance. NASDAQ hasn't quite made it up there yet, but the Dow has stayed above it. So Dow is still looking bullish. So looking at our normal stuff, Apple is still inside month. Paying attention to Microsoft because we've been talking about Microsoft since it made this new low. And last week I mentioned about the outside month. It's headed there. It's kind of slowly grinding there, but if it does push, then we will see, a couple more green days to push to this 251 target. And so SPY also still has a little more room. Looking at it on the month, we see that the target is 411, but we know once we get down to the day, we know there's a gap up there that it could fill. And then the same thing with the Qs. So if Microsoft continues to this 250, then the Qs will at least come to this resistance, this 8 resistance that I have. Looking at it on the week, I know Apple is inside week, and I like that. It's kind of in a tight place in between these two EMAs, so kind of have to see which way it breaks. I'm looking more to the downside, to be honest, but we're always ready either way. But looking like if it can break 146.59, I mean, we have a nice range to the downside, which would bring everything down, and of course that would coincide with the VIX reversing at that moment. So but keeping in mind with Microsoft, like before, the market couldn't fall because Microsoft was going. If Microsoft continues and does this to continuation on the week to the 251, then it may want to do that before we fall. But the market is not going to fall if Microsoft continues to go. So there's no actionable signals though on the SPY or the Qs on the week, but Apple does have this inside week like that. So, and then if it like really dies, it'd have to break for Microsoft. It'd have to break 240, but it could rev strat on the week. So, and then looking at it on the day, you point out SPY, that gap we were talking about is up here. Nope, that's the wrong one. It's this one. There is one up there, but we're not really looking at that one just yet. We're more focused on this shorter term one. just because we know we have this resistance right here. So I've been talking about how this looked similar to August right here. So look at here, pull this down some. So look here and then look here, and they're both around this 200 EMA. And then here, if price decides to repeat itself, it may want to go and test this 200 SMA, which would give us this gap fill a little bit. So because it did this before and then came up here, tested it, and just fell, I honestly expected to do that same thing, come up here, test it, and then fall. But keeping in mind that if it does come up here, test it, break above, and stay above, then we're bullish. And I will switch to being long-term bullish. I also want to point out on this daily that you can see this inverse head and shoulders. So see the shoulder, the head, and the shoulder. So all of this consolidation over the last like 2 weeks kind of made a shoulder, just like over here. So like we were talking about that down here where it made a smaller head and inverse head and shoulders. This was the shoulder, this was the head, this was the shoulder, and it played out, right? And I said it was valid unless it broke here, this 360 area, and so it held, made higher lows. And then now when you zoom out, it's made a bigger inverse head and shoulders. So this is only invalidated really if it breaks under 390, because then that shoulder will just have broken. So just keep in mind this whole area right here is a shoulder area that it can continue to iron out before it picks a direction, either up or down. So Apple doesn't quite have the same, but Microsoft does. See the shoulder, the head, the shoulder. Q's, not really. So yeah, wanted to point those out on the day. Kind of see, gotta see what SPY does though. I'm looking for that 408, and then we do have a gap down here also that we need to fill, pretty big gap. So two different gaps we can target to the upside and to the downside. Actually, it's two gaps to the upside and one to the downside. So just kind of have to see what next week gives us. And then, okay, let's go into the regular stuff. So IWM, small caps. Sorry, my kids, y'all. So we're still in force on the month, but we just barely hit the target. So I think it was enough that you see it started to come back in. So right now we just have like a doji on the month. It's kind of doing nothing. See on the 2 week, we're still inside on the 2 week, so also not doing anything in between these two EMAs. On the weekly, we found some support. So it's inside green, so it could kind of go either way. This would be a nice play. Break above 186. Target would be 189.51. Y'all know this is like 189.68. Y'all know this is like SPY, so you can play this 3 times a week. And then the break below 180.79. Target 174.43. But keep in mind we have support here, and these EMAs look like they're about to cross. So we'll just have to see if it breaks this support on the week. And on the day, we're actually at a resistance. So you see the last time it hit here, it fell. This is kind of looking not like SPY, only because these EMAs are tighter here. But it's letting you know that it's getting tight and kind of getting ready to make a move in one direction or another. But it is at a resistance. MACD is about to cross to the downside too. So, and it's a shooter on the day. But you see the support that it has here. So I really wouldn't be ready to short this, honestly, unless it really reversed and these EMAs started to turn down. So XLE energy has just been on a tear. It's just one of those things you just shouldn't short yet. Everybody's waiting to short energy because it's just been going, and I think that's the problem, is that everybody's waiting to short it and it's not ready to be shorted yet. So we got an outside trigger on the 2-week, and so we're 1 week into the 2 weeks, so we have one more week. So if it finishes, then the target for that is 94.71. I don't know why I did that. It's right there. 94.71 is the target for that on the 2 week. And then we have, it's not really a hammer, but it's a 2-up reversal. So break above 93.34. Finish that move. And on the day you can kind of see it's just not ready to be shorted. If anything, like, you can catch a short day trade, maybe to the 8 if it's far away, to the 8 or to the 20. But for the most part, it's been holding. We do have a rev strat set up here on a day, though. So it could rev strat, come down here and fill this little gap that it has. 90.71. Is this a shoulder, head, shoulder? But see, I may be a little too early because, again, it's not ready to be shorted. But that is giving me head and shoulder vibes here. It would just need to iron out the shoulder area. So if it does that, if it like irons out the shoulder area here and then drops, it may be ready to drop. And it would really need to break this 87. But yeah, so otherwise it's still kind of buy the dip. They are buying this dip and have been since here, really. This gap is still unfulfilled. There's a couple of gaps to the downside unfulfilled. So all right, so into the plays we've been talking about all month. One of them was McDonald's. Last week I was talking about it doing kind of the same thing I was just saying with the XLE, giving us a head and shoulders, and it's doing that on the day. We have the shoulder here, we have the head, and it's giving us the shoulder over the last few days. So looking to see if this is ready to come down and correct, maybe target this gap here at 260. Looking at it on the month, yeah, we've reached exhaustion. Nothing on the 2 week. So a reversal on the weekly would be nice. This is, yeah, so 2 up, 2 down, maybe. It has corrected to the 8 here though, so you know, it may be like target and not want to fall. Which we'll get the target in a little bit. But yeah, if it, you know, is ready to come down, then it may be time, and we can target this gap here. It needs to break this support though at 270, and then 266 is the target, 262, and then this gap fill 260. So yeah, it's exhausted. So let me see something really quickly. So yeah, bottom to broadening formation is 265. So it may do something like that before it can get to 260. Oop. What are we doing? Okay. All right. Snow. So Snow wasn't acting right this week, as you can see. It wasn't giving us like these type of moves. You know, we like the big green and red bars. It was just like kind of sideways. But, you know, understanding that this is necessary, because when you make big moves like that, you need some type of consolidation before you have your next move, or to just iron out price areas. And as you can see, this is an area right here that is just kind of ironing out. So I kind of have to see what Snow decides to do. Not much time on the month left, but it's already triggered and taken out those two targets. So, and then it came back in. 2 week is nothing. But I do like this weekly, just because, you know, with the month we took out a couple of people, so it could be ready to reverse and come back up here. So a break above 147.82. So that would be my first target. Would be this 154, the 20, 162, and then the strat target 168.18. It's nice and tight though. So you know, if the bulls take control and break above here, that's a decent range there. It did not fill this gap though, so keeping in mind, we're going to keep this in mind because, you know, it's just an area that's unfulfilled. So we want to make sure we know this, it may come for this. It could go either way. So, and then we do have a gap to the upside here. So looking at it on the week, yeah, 153.95, and the gap is right there, 153.95. So that gap coincides with the 8 on the week. So that would be a target to the upside. But as you can see, you know, this has been resistance. So really, you know, we have this inside day. It's a doji, but it's kind of a hammer. It's more a doji. So just have to see if this still plays as a resistance, and decides to like sort of H and come down here, or if it wants to come up and fill the gap and then continue down, or however it wants to go. So that's Snow. XOXL we've been watching because of the chips and stuff like that. We have an inside week here. It's not really a strong candle, but it's still inside week, and it's in a tricky area, but a break to either side of this candle is what I would really like to see. Let me see this on the month. Okay, so we're still in force on the month. Almost hit that target. So have to see what next week brings. I mean, if we have 3 green days, it may want to push up. I don't think it would hit that 15 now. ATR is $1, so I guess it could if we have a couple green days. Nothing on the 2 week. Yeah, so on the day, you see that we have somewhat found some support here. We have a gap here to look out for, where it gapped up. This is a whole area. Look at this area. It gapped down here and then gapped up through here. So I wouldn't be surprised if at some point it comes back down and sits around here and irons this area out. It could definitely do that the way it's looking here. It's not really a shooter, but could be a play to this 8, to the strat target, or to this gap. So the upside, it's not really any gaps to target, so it would just be strat targets 1453, a break of 1382, 1453, and then 1506, which I believe is the monthly target. Yep. BA is still doing its thing. This is beautiful. It's what they call a cup and handle. And you know it's a little handle there because it just found that support right there and just expected to just do this. On a month, kind of at a resistance, and still have some room to go before it hits like the bottom of the monthly downtrend that it's in. So 192 it could still go to. That would need some time, and it actually may be exhausted, but it did trigger the quarter. So 212 up on the quarter. Target is that 192. And we do have 1 month left of quarter. So by the end of December, it could definitely do that. A 2 week. Not, we're still inside, but about to break up for a 2-2 continuation. And it's not an actionable signal on the week, but you see this kind of double bottom here, W. So yeah, top of that broadening formations, 190, 189 to 192. It may make it too. On the day, we are above the 200. So keeping that in mind, we have broken above and held. So yeah, BA is doing very well. Targets has those two big gaps. Remember, we got this big gap up here, and then we just had earnings and had that gap down. So last week, I was mentioning that we came down and filled this gap here, and so we were looking to see what it would do after it corrected to the 8. So it's looking like it's finding support. They bought that dip. Got an inside day here. So this is actually a decent play for Monday. If it wants to break above, I would give it 165. Break above 165, we can go for this gap. And I would give it time, just because, as you can see, like we filled this gap and we corrected to the 8, but it took 3 days. So, you don't want to short yourself on time waiting for it to do that, and it may do it and then need to correct and then do it. It may go up and then come back down to the 8 and then go up. So you want to give it a little bit of time, but your target would be this gap fill at 177, which would coincide with the 200 on the day. And then over time, it may want to fill this huge gap here to 209. But it would need to break this 200 on the day and hold. I tell y'all that all the time. So otherwise, that's the upside. This is a beautiful inside bar because it's so small. And it's right where the EMAs are, and the EMAs are tight. So that's something I want to point out to y'all. This is like one of my favorite setups, just because either I'm always ready either way, but either way it goes, it kind of gives you multiple things of multiple confluence, I guess, and multiple confirmation. You have your strat because you got your inside bar, so it's a 2-1-2 break in either direction. You got your EMAs that are tight here, so if it breaks up there, this is going to turn up, and that'll give you that extra confirmation. If it breaks down, it's going to turn down. It's so tight that it's waiting for that direction to be chosen, and so once it chooses the direction, then also time frame continuity should flip with that. So and then also keep that in mind with time frame continuity. We will start a new month on Thursday, so it's going to be in conflict for about a week and a half. So yeah, so that's target. Then I had cats on here. I think it was an inside week. Yes, inside week. And I just, what else did I have? Was it the month? We reached our target. I actually don't remember why I had cat on here, y'all. It's exhausted because it's reached the quarterly target. It's reached the monthlies. It technically has one more, but it looks exhausted. It must have been the inside week that I had this on here, y'all. But it's not necessarily the greatest setup, but it could definitely come and correct to this 8, which is a decent amount. It's like $17. And then this gap here. See, it gapped above the 200. That's interesting. Noticing that this type of resistance that it has, it gapped above it. That's how strong it went above this resistance. So to see, it may or may not fill this gap. It would have to break this 8 support. So I'm looking at this, but I actually don't remember why I put this on here, y'all. I think I may have seen it on volume or something like that. it made lower lows and then came up here and made a higher high. So so we could still finish this and make a new high, actually, just because it tested the bottom of this and then now, but it's also taking them out, so that exhaustion could cause it to pull back some. It's a big gap though. I'm gonna keep this on watch for exhaustion. And then lastly, we have PayPal. So PayPal, we talked about last week on Saturday. Where is it? Here. Yes. So what it was this inside day. Again, I just told y'all about the inside day, where the EMAs, where it shows you, okay, wherever way it's going to go, it's going to cross, and that'll give you extra confirmation. This is actually an example of it. It crossed to the downside, and you see how the EMAs cross with it. So it was also a red. It wasn't a shooter, but it was just a red candle. You kind of knew it had rejected there. There's a gap here to fill. So that's what we saw with PayPal. Y'all know I normally don't do Monday trades, but this was a perfect Monday trade. It didn't gap down, not too much, but it opened close enough to this candle, gave you your signal, and then it came all the way down and filled the gap, and then some. So it didn't quite fill that second gap, but you knew to get out because it also triggered the weekly. So that 2-1, 2 down triggered the 2 up, 2 down on the week. The target was hit here, and so that's where you get out, and then it came back up. You see it came back up, gave you a hammer. Boom. So now we have an inside day, and just want to see what PayPal does. What it most likely will do is what it's been doing, and come back up here and test this. And then maybe come down and try to fill this gap since it didn't quite. Could also, because this is a red day, a red inside, this could be the exact same setup here. Well, not exact same because it's not next to the EMAs, but it could also on Monday just puke. I like it better here because it's near the EMAs, but if it's a good something to keep your eye on to see if it does do that same thing again, or if it does come up here and test these EMAs again. So that is all I have. Let me see if there are any questions. Ashley, you have any questions?
No, I'm just listening and trying to follow along. I'm kind of new to the strat stuff, so I'm just trying to pick up what I can right now. But I'll definitely have questions later down the road.
Of course.
You did a great job. Thank you.
Of course. Is there any stocks you wanted me to look at? Anything you were looking at? You want my thoughts on?
Right now I'm only really focusing on just practicing on AMD, Netflix, and the Spy right now. So
Okay. So I did spy AMD. I think I liked AMD on a week, I believe it was. I'm gonna take this off. No, not that one. No, I'm gonna leave those on. Yes, inside week. So, and these EMAs are just so tight. It's kind of in a funky place because it could kind of go either way. This is almost a shooter, but because it's green and it ended here, it's kind of like not quite sure. It's on the day it hit that resistance and came back down. But after this consolidation, we finally found some support here, it seems like. So one thing I remember when I first started watching AMD, it was like $85, and it stayed at $85 for like the longest. So it has a history of doing that. and it stayed here for a long time, and I realized that was because, let's say it's back here, yep, it had gapped up in this area, so it had to iron out this price area for a while. So my next the next real resistance, as you can see, is where it's at right now, at this 75.14. So, and it likes this area. Kind of have to see if it breaks through that resistance. It tried once and rejected. So if it does, I expect it to iron out this area. It needs to. It has this gap here at 83 that I've kind of been targeting. Let me update this. Wait, look on the week. This is a higher high, so I need to update that. Don't like that though. Yes, I like that range better, especially for the day. So yeah, ironed out this area. So now this next area, I'm looking forward to target. If it can break 80, so we need to break 76. Next target is 78, 79, and then 81.59, which is this strat target. If we can break that, then we can get to this gap fill here. And you know, AMD is AMD, so it's not gonna fall but so much. When it was here, I honestly was waiting for it to get down to like 51. I was like, that was the next support level, but this proved to be a solid support. So honestly, I don't think that it's gonna fall much more. If it does, I think that this 64 is like a super solid support. Actually, 68 and then 64 and then 60 was like the most solid. So yeah, it's not really a good pattern here. It's kind of a shoulder, head, shoulder. It's lopsided, but you know. Well, actually, it's one here. Shoulder, head, shoulder. So this whole shoulder here could be like this one and take up this entire area, just because that's how AMD has moved for 2 years. So, but you know, it's really good when it does pick a direction and you have these good green bars. So just stay away from when it decides to stay in an area. Like, I would really only play it if it breaks to the upside, because to the downside, this area is a chop area. Unless it breaks under 71, then it will probably fall fast to this next support of 68. Of course, you know, those $2-3 moves are decent if you catch AMD on the right day with a cheap contract. So you said AMD on Netflix. Oh, Netflix is at that resistance now. Netflix still has that gap, right? Have a gap. Oh, it got really close. Interesting. Okay. So we still have the gap at 332. This 200 crossed under the 200 EMA. That's interesting. And we're sitting right at this resistance. And we made a higher high and came in, but this is almost like an M. So I kind of have to see what Netflix does. Let me look at it on the month. Let's see. We had this 3 here. Basically, it opened here, it came down, took out these folks, came back in, took out these folks, and ended strong. So bulls are in control, right? So you look to see if it continues the 3-2 up. It didn't. It took these folks out and then came back in, just like how it did here. So see, it took them out, came back in, took them out, came back in. So because this is the month and we only have 3 days of month left, it's not going to do the same thing because it's not enough time. But you do want to see that it did not continue that bull strength before the bears stepped in. So On the week, it's not strong. It's really not strong. But on the day, it's just kind of in a tight place. Just kind of have to see what it does. This is proven to be a strong resistance. And then when I just showed you on the month, the bear stepping in. If the market is bearish, then it's definitely going to come down. You see, it filled, well, almost filled this gap, but it filled it enough, I think, where that may not matter as much. Just have to see how strong of a resistance this is. It's also in between two EMAs, which I don't like when it's doing that because I think that's like a sign of indecision and chop. So I would wait to see it break out of this area, either break above and, above the 8 EMA and get above this 200 and go, or break below and these start turning down, but not being in between them. Like when I was showing you earlier where they were tight, that's a little bit different because it's tight and the break above, it'll turn. But when it's in between, kind of just don't know what it's going to do, and it can stay in between for a while. So yeah, so that's what I see on Netflix. Um, but we also want to keep in mind that it has made higher lows. So if it does fall, I think that what's the next support I have? Probably here. Actually, it's sitting at, this is proven to be a solid support. It's 283. So then 278, 271, 260. So see, I'm using wick candles. Lows of the wick candles as supports. And then my next solid support would be here. This 254 because it's bounced twice from here, 3 times. 255.64. That's the next solid support. But also, if it does that and then it breaks there, it's made the M. So I would expect more downside, to be honest.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at. That's kind of what I was. So you pretty much confirmed what I thought. At least I know I was thinking right.
Yes, you got this, girl. That's what I'm talking
Getting
about.
there. Appreciate that.
Of course. All right. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and go.